The notification blinked on my phone. A travel itinerary update. I smiled, thinking Daniel had upgraded our seats for the holiday trip home. We'd been planning this National Day and Mid-Autumn Festival visit for months. The first time he'd bring me home to meet his parents officially. My fingers trembled with excitement as I tapped the screen. Flight change confirmed. Bennett's e-ticket rescheduled to October 3rd. October 3rd? That was 3 days after Daniel was supposed to leave. 3 days after we were supposed to leave together. My breath hitched. This had to be a mistake. I scrolled further down the email, my heart beginning to pound an irregular rhythm against my ribs. Original passenger Parker, Daniel now accompanied by Rossi, Sophia. The name hit me with the force of a physical blow. Sophia Rossi, my father's daughter from his affair, the sister I never wanted, the shadow that had loomed over my family since I was 12 years old. And now she was accompanying my boyfriend home for the holidays. The room seemed to tilt, the walls closing in. I gripped the edge of my desk, knuckles turning white. This couldn't be happening. Daniel knew what Sophia represented. The broken Christmases, the whispered arguments between my parents, the way my father's eyes would light up for her in a way they never did for me. Daniel had been my refuge through it all. I reached for my phone, my fingers clumsy as I dialed his number. It went straight to voicemail. Of course. He was probably with her right now, helping her pack, laughing about some private joke they shared. The thought made me nauseous. A memory surfaced, unbidden. Daniel at 16 standing between me and Sophia at a family gathering. My father had just given Sophia the necklace that had belonged to my grandmother, the one I'd been promised since childhood. I'd fled to the garden, tears streaming down my face. "She's not worth your tears, Chloe," Daniel had said, his voice firm yet gentle. He'd wiped my cheeks with his thumbs. "You're twice the person she'll ever be. I'll always be here to remind you of that. Always." The word echoed in the empty space of my dorm room, taunting me. I opened our message thread, scrolling back through weeks of conversations. His replies had grown shorter, more delayed. I'd blamed his internship, the demanding hours. Now I saw the pattern I'd been willfully ignoring. Me, "Can't wait for your parents to finally meet me properly." Daniel, "Yeah, they're excited." Me, "What should I bring? Your mom likes tea, right?" Daniel, "Don't worry about it. He's not picky." Me, "Sophia asked if I wanted to get lunch next week." Weird, right? Daniel, "You should give her a chance, Chloe. People change. People change. Or they reveal who they've been all along." Another notification, this time from social media. Sophia had posted a photo. There she was, leaning against Daniel's car, sunglasses perched on her head, holding up 2 train tickets. The caption made my blood run cold. "So excited for my first family holiday. 2 hearts, thanks for the upgrade, D. #blessed, #new beginnings." The comments were already pouring in. "You and Daniel Parker? Since when? OMG, you two look perfect together. Meeting the parents? Moving fast." Sophia had liked every single one but hadn't corrected anyone. Of course she hadn't. This was exactly what she wanted, what she'd always wanted. To take what was mine. I felt the walls of my reality crumbling around me. 7 years with Daniel. 7 years of shared history, inside jokes, whispered promises in the dark. All reduced to a social media post and a cancelled ticket. My gaze fell on a framed photo on my desk. Daniel and me at the beach last summer, his arms wrapped around me, both of us sun-kissed and laughing. I picked it up, tracing the glass over his smile. Who was this stranger who could do something like this? The rational part of my brain screamed that there had to be an explanation. Maybe his parents had insisted he bring Sophia? But no, that made even less sense. The Parkers had always been kind to me, always treated me like part of the family. Mrs. Parker had even shown me her wedding album, pointing out which heirlooms she hoped Daniel would one day give to his wife. His wife. The word now felt like a mockery. I needed to get out of this room, needed air. I shoved my phone in my pocket and headed for the door, nearly colliding with my roommate, Maya. "Whoa, Chloe. Where's the fire?" she asked, then took in my face. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "It's Daniel," I managed, my voice thick. "He changed my ticket. He's taking Sophia home to meet his parents instead." Maya's expression shifted from concern to outrage. "He what? Oh, no way. There has to be some mistake." That's what I thought. I showed her the email, then Sophia's post. But it's pretty clear, isn't it? Her face fell. Oh, Chloe. I'm so sorry. That bastard. He pulled me into a hug. What are you going to do? I don't know, I whispered into her shoulder. Confront him, I guess. But he's not answering his phone. Then we'll go find him, Maya said firmly. Let me grab my keys. As she disappeared into her room, my phone buzzed again. For a wild moment, I thought it might be Daniel, ready with some logical explanation that would make everything okay again. But it wasn't. It was a text from a number I hadn't heard from in years. Alexander Blackwood, in town for a few days. Heard you were at state. Would be nice to catch up. Xander. The boy who'd spent one summer following me around my grandfather's estate, the grandson of grandfather's oldest friend. We'd been children then, but he'd written me letters for years after, sweet, awkward letters that had eventually tapered off as we grew older. The last I'd heard, he was following his family into politics. An idea began to form in my mind, reckless, desperate, and utterly unlike me. But then, the Chloe who would have talked herself out of it was the same Chloe who believed Daniel would never betray her. That Chloe was gone. My fingers moved over the screen before I could second-guess myself. Me actually, would you be interested in getting engaged? I stared at the words, my heart hammering. What was I doing? This was insane. He'd think I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. The 3 dots appeared immediately. He was typing. The response came seconds later. Alexander Blackwood. I'll pick you up in 20 minutes. Be ready. Maya emerged from her room, keys in hand. Ready to go hunt down your terrible boyfriend? I looked up from my phone, a strange calm settling over me. Change of plans. I need to get dressed. Why? Where are you going? I met her bewildered gaze in the reflection of my mirror. I think I'm getting engaged. I took a shaky breath, the reality of what I had just set in motion finally hitting me. Maya stood frozen in our doorway, her keys dangling from her finger. Engaged? She repeated slowly, as if testing the word in a foreign language. Chloe, what did you do? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed again, this time with a location pin and a simple message. Outside your dorm in 18 minutes. Wear something that makes you feel powerful. Xander. Of course he would be that specific. That confident. I remembered that about him even from our childhood summers. How he'd always known exactly where he was going while the rest of us wandered. I texted Alexander Blackwood, I explained to Maya, my voice surprisingly steady. I asked if he wanted to get engaged. Her eyes widened. The political family Blackwoods? And he just said yes. Apparently. I moved to my closet, my mind racing. What did one wear to a fake engagement? Something that made me feel powerful? The red dress Daniel had always said was too bold. Perfect. Maya grabbed my arm. Chloe, wait. Think about this. Daniel's being a colossal jerk, but this is extreme. Exactly. I slipped the dress from its hanger. It needs to be extreme. It needs to be so public and so undeniable that Daniel can't worm his way back. That my father can't dismiss it. That Sophia. My voice caught. That Sophia can't undo it. But you barely know this guy. I know enough. The dress shimmered in my hands, the same crimson as the autumn maples outside my grandfather's estate where Xander and I had played as children. His grandfather and mine were comrades. Our families have been connected for generations. And he understood what I was asking without needing explanations. Maya shook her head but helped me with the zipper. This is either the most brilliant or most disastrous thing you've ever done. Probably both, I admitted, applying a bold red lipstick to match the dress. But it's better than sitting here crying while Daniel takes my replacement home to his parents. The thought sent fresh anger coursing through me, stiffening my resolve. I remembered Mrs. Parker's words just last month. You're like the daughter I never had, Chloe. Had she known then that her son was planning to replace me? Or was she as blindsided as I was? My phone lit up with Daniel's name. I let it go to voicemail. Then again. And again. On the 4th call I answered. Chloe, thank God. Daniel's voice was breathless. There's been a huge misunderstanding. My mom. Save it. I cut him off, my voice cold. I saw the tickets. I saw Sophia's post. He sighed, the familiar sound that usually meant I was being dramatic. Sophia's going through a hard time. Her mom's sick. She has nowhere to go for the holidays. And you're taking her to meet your parents? I laughed bitterly. What a compassionate solution, Daniel. Do you usually take charity cases home as potential daughters-in-law? Chloe, that's not fair. His tone shifted to defensive. You know how your dad feels about her being included in family events. I thought if my parents met her, showed her acceptance. Stop. The word came out sharp as broken glass. Stop lying to me. And stop lying to yourself. You changed my ticket. You were going to let me arrive 3 days later to find my sister already settled in with your family. Silence. Then quietly, it's not what you think. It never is. I looked at my reflection, the girl in the red dress with fire in her eyes. Goodbye, Daniel. I ended the call just as headlights flashed through my window. A sleek black car had pulled up to the curb below. He's here, I whispered. Maya peered out the window. Oh my God. That's not a car, that's a statement. She turned back to me, her expression serious. Last chance to back out. I squared my shoulders. I'm not backing out. Xander Blackwood stood leaning against the car door, looking like he'd stepped out of a political campaign photo. The boy I remembered had filled out into a man with sharp cheekbones and an even sharper suit. His eyes, the same intense blue I remembered from childhood, tracked my approach. Chloe Bennett, he said, his voice deeper than I remembered. The red dress was the right choice. Xander. I stopped before him, suddenly uncertain. Thank you for this. He opened the passenger door. We have 40 minutes until we need to be at the restaurant. I assume you want the full story before we face anyone. The restaurant. I slid into the leather seat, confused. Our engagement dinner, he said smoothly, closing my door before circling to the driver's side. With my parents and grandfather. My stomach dropped. So soon? I thought we'd have time to, I don't know, come up with a story. The best stories are true, he said, pulling away from the curb. So tell me what happened. As we drove through the darkening streets, the words spilled out of me. The rescheduled ticket. Sophia's social media post. Daniel's excuses. The years of watching my father prefer his illegitimate daughter over me. The way Daniel had been my one constant, or so I'd thought. Xander listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he said only, Daniel Parker always was an idiot. You remember him? We went to boarding school together for a year before his family pulled him out. Xander's knuckles tightened on the steering wheel. He bragged about dating the granddaughter of General Bennett. I knew it had to be you. The world felt suddenly impossibly small. You never said anything. It didn't seem relevant. He glanced at me. Until tonight. We pulled up to an elegant restaurant I could never have afforded on a student budget. Valets swarmed the car, but Xander waved them off. One more thing, he said, turning to me. From his pocket he produced a small velvet box. This was my grandmother's. I'd like you to wear it. He opened the box to reveal an exquisite emerald ring surrounded by diamonds. It glittered in the dim light, ancient and priceless. Xander, I can't. You can. He took my hand, his touch surprisingly gentle. If we're doing this, we're doing it properly. The Blackwoods don't do things by halves. He slid the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly. How did you know my size? I know many things about you, Chloe Bennett. His smile was subtle but genuine. I've been following your academic career. Your piece on constitutional law in the Harvard Review was impressive. You read that? My grandfather made sure I kept up with General Bennett's granddaughter. He released my hand. Ready. The restaurant fell silent as we entered. Every head turned and I realized with a jolt that people recognized Xander. Whispers followed us like a trail. Blackwood air. Is that? Who's the woman? Xander's hand found the small of my back, steadying me. Remember, he murmured, you're the granddaughter of a war hero. You outrank everyone in this room. In a private dining room overlooking the city, 3 people waited. An older version of Xander, his father with the same intense blue eyes. An elegant woman with silver-streaked dark hair, his mother. And between them the man I remembered from my childhood, General Blackwood, his posture still military straight despite his age. Grandfather, Xander said smoothly. Mother, father. I'd like you to meet my fiancée, Chloe Bennett. The silence stretched. Mrs. Blackwood's eyes dropped to the emerald ring on my finger, then widened slightly. General Blackwood was the first to speak. Alara's granddaughter. His voice was rough with emotion. You have her eyes. He rose, moving with a soldier's precision despite his years, and took my hands. Your grandfather was my best friend. Did he ever tell you about the time we stole a jeep to get to the front lines? I smiled, surprised. He said you were the worst driver he'd ever met. The general's laugh boomed through the room. That sounds like Arthur. He turned to his son. She's perfect. Mr. Blackwood studied me with a politician's assessing gaze. This is sudden. Love often is, Xander said, pulling out a chair for me. As we took our seats, Mrs. Blackwood leaned toward me. That ring was meant for Xander's bride. I'm glad it's found its way to someone worthy of it. The conversation flowed more easily than I expected. They asked about my studies, my mother, carefully avoiding any mention of my father. It was only when dessert arrived that General Blackwood fixed me with a serious look. Chloe, I need to ask, he said. Does Arthur know? The question hung in the air. My grandfather had passed away 5 years ago, but I understood what he meant. About the engagement? I asked carefully. About any of this? His gaze was piercing. About Daniel Parker's betrayal. About your father's preferences. Tears pricked my eyes. No, sir. I don't think he does. He'd be furious. The general's hand closed over mine. Arthur Bennett's granddaughter treated like this. He turned to Xander. You'll make this right? Absolutely, Xander said, his voice firm. After dinner, as we walked back to the car, Xander's phone buzzed continuously. He ignored it until we were seated inside. It's starting, he said, showing me the screen. A gossip site had already posted blurry photos of us at the restaurant with the headline, Blackwood Heir Off the Market. Mystery woman wears family emerald. The comments were already pouring in. Speculation, recognition, congratulations. My phone began to buzz as well. Friends, acquaintances, my mother. I gestured to my phone, suddenly overwhelmed. Wait, Xander said. There's something you need to understand about what we're doing. He drove us to a lookout point overlooking the city. The lights twinkled below us, a sea of possibilities and consequences. My family, he began, is very powerful. And very public. This engagement, even if it started as your revenge, is now real in the eyes of the world. There's no going back without significant consequences. I understand, I said quietly. Do you? He turned to face me. Because this isn't just about making Daniel Parker regret his choices. This is about you becoming a Blackwood. The scrutiny, the expectations, the complete loss of privacy. I thought of Daniel and Sophia, probably already at his parents' house by now. Of my father's dismissive attitude. Of the years I'd spent trying to earn love from people who clearly didn't value me. I'm not afraid, I said, and realized I meant it. Xander studied me for a long moment. Good. He started the car again. Then let's go make this official. Where are we going? Your dorm, he said. To get your things. You're moving into the Blackwood residence tonight. The finality of it should have terrified me. Instead, I felt a strange sense of peace. I was trading a life of seeking approval for one of undeniable power. Trading a man who hid me for one who showcased me. Trading love that had been conditional for a partnership that was, at least, honest in its transaction. As we pulled up to my dorm, I saw a familiar figure leaning against the entrance. Daniel, his face drawn and anxious. Xander followed my gaze. Would you like me to handle this? No, I said, opening my door. This one's mine. Daniel straightened as I approached. Chloe, thank God. We need to talk. This is all a huge misunderstanding. He reached for me, but I stepped back. The motion made the emerald on my finger catch the light. Daniel's eyes dropped to the ring. What is that? My engagement ring, I said calmly. He laughed, a hollow, disbelieving sound. Very funny. Now can we please talk like adults? Xander came to stand beside me, his presence immediately changing the dynamic. Parker, he said, the single word dripping with disdain. Daniel's smile vanished. Blackwood? What are you doing here? Collecting my fiancé's things, Xander said. We'd appreciate it if you'd move. The word fiancé seemed to physically strike Daniel. He looked between us, confusion giving way to dawning horror. This is a joke, right? Some kind of performance. It's no performance, I said. Unlike your relationship with my sister. Daniel's face flushed. It's not like that. Her mother is sick, she has nowhere to go. Save it, I cut him off. I'm done with your excuses. I'm done with you. I moved to walk past him, but he grabbed my arm. Chloe, please. You're not thinking clearly. Before I could respond, Xander's hand closed over Daniel's wrist. Remove your hand, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. Now. The two men stared at each other, a silent battle of wills. Daniel was the first to look away, releasing my arm. This isn't over, Daniel muttered. Yes, I said, meeting his gaze squarely. It is. As we walked inside, I didn't look back. I could feel Daniel's eyes on me, but the weight of the emerald on my finger and Xander's hand on my back were anchors in the storm. Upstairs, Maya had already started packing my things. I saw Daniel downstairs, she said, her eyes wide. He looks terrible. He should, I said, beginning to empty my closet. Xander waited in the common area, giving us privacy. Maya lowered her voice. Are you sure about this, Chloe? Really sure. I looked at the half-packed boxes, at the life I was leaving behind. The photos of Daniel and me. The little souvenirs from our relationship. The person I had been. The one who believed in forever, in promises, in love that could withstand anything. That girl was gone. I've never been more sure of anything, I said, and meant it. As we carried my things downstairs, Daniel was still there, his phone to his ear. I don't know who she's with, but she's lost her mind, he was saying. Some guy from her past, I think. She's wearing a ring and everything. He turned as we approached, his expression pleading. Chloe, please. Let's just talk. Xander loaded the last of my boxes into the trunk. She said everything she needs to say to you. Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his face paling. Hi, Mother, he whispered. She saw the photos online. She's furious. I felt a petty thrill at his distress. Mrs. Parker had always liked me, had always said I was good for Daniel. Now she would see exactly what her son had thrown away. Goodbye, Daniel, I said, sliding into the passenger seat. As we drove away, I watched him in the side mirror, a shrinking figure standing alone in the dark. The boy who had promised to always protect me. The man who had broken me. But as Xander's hand found mine across the console, I realized something important. Sometimes the breaking is what lets the light in. Sometimes the ruin is where you find your foundation. And sometimes, the most reckless decision you ever make is the one that saves you. The Blackwood residence wasn't a house. It was a fortress of old money and power, set behind iron gates at the city's most prestigious address. As we drove through, I saw lights blazing in every window of the colonial-style mansion. Xander parked and came around to open my door. Welcome home, he said, his hand firm under my elbow as I stepped out. Before we could reach the door, it swung open to reveal a stern-faced woman in her 60s, her gray hair pulled into a severe bun. Alexander, she said, her eyes scanning me with clinical precision. Your mother called. The media inquiries have already started. Aunt Beatrice, Xander said smoothly. This is Chloe Bennett, my fiancée. Chloe, my aunt and the family's chief of staff. Beatrice's expression didn't change, but her eyes lingered on the emerald ring. I see you've wasted no time. She stepped aside. Your mother is waiting in the library. There are developments. The library was exactly what I imagined a room in a political dynasty's home would look like. Floor-to-ceiling books, leather furniture, and portraits of serious-looking men who all shared Xander's jawline. Mrs. Blackwood stood by the fireplace, phone to her ear. Yes, Margaret, it's true, she was saying, her voice calm but firm. Arthur Bennett's granddaughter. The engagement has been planned for some time. We were simply waiting for Chloe to finish her exams. She listened for a moment, then laughed lightly. No, of course you're invited to the party. I'll have Beatrice send the details. She hung up and turned to us, her composure flawless, though I could see the tension around her eyes. That was Margaret Whitlock, the biggest gossip in 3 states. She came forward and took both my hands. Are you all right, dear? The genuine concern in her voice surprised me. I think so, I said. Things are moving very quickly. That they are. She gestured to a seating area. We need to discuss strategy. The story has broken faster than anticipated. She handed me a tablet showing the morning's society pages. There we were, Xander helping me into the car outside my dorm, the emerald ring clearly visible on my finger. The headline read, Blackwood heir claims Bennett heiress in surprise engagement. I scanned the article, my stomach tightening. They'd already connected the dots. My grandfather's military legacy, my father's business, even Daniel's family. They know everything, I whispered. Not everything, Mrs. Blackwood corrected. They know what we want them to know. That's the game, Chloe. Xander sat beside me, his thigh brushing mine. What's the damage? Minimal, actually, his mother said. The narrative is playing in our favor. Childhood sweethearts, family legacies reunited. She smiled slightly. It's rather romantic if you think about it. Beatrice entered with another tablet. Daniel Parker has given a statement to Campus Life magazine. She turned the screen toward me. There was Daniel's face, looking heartbreakingly sincere. Chloe and I have been growing apart for some time, he was quoted as saying. I wish her every happiness with Xander Blackwood. As for Sophia Rossi, she's a family friend going through a difficult time. Any suggestion of romance between us is completely unfounded. My hands trembled with fury. He's lying. They're both lying. Of course they are, Mrs. Blackwood said calmly. But this is good for us. He looks weak, dismissing a 7-year relationship as growing apart, while you've moved on to a very public engagement. Xander took the tablet and scanned the article. He's trying to save face. Pathetic. There's more, Beatrice said. Sophia Rossi has posted again. She showed us Sophia's social media. A photo of her with Daniel's parents at what looked like a cozy family dinner. The caption, so grateful for the Parker family's warmth and acceptance during a difficult time. Family isn't always blood. It's who shows up for you. #blessed, #new beginnings. The comments were filled with support and speculation about her relationship with Daniel. A few people mentioned my sudden engagement to Xander, with several implying I'd been the one cheating. I need to respond, I said, my voice shaking. I need to tell people what really happened. No. Mrs. Blackwood's voice was sharp. That's exactly what they want. They want you to look emotional, reactive. We maintain the high ground. But, Chloe. Xander took my hand. Listen to my mother. She's been handling Blackwood family crises since before I was born. Mrs. Blackwood smiled faintly. The strategy is simple. We act as if their drama is beneath our notice. We're too busy planning our future to concern ourselves with past relationships. Beatrice nodded. I've already scheduled an interview with Elegant World magazine for tomorrow. Engagement photos the day after. The Blackwood-Bennett union is the story. Everything else is background noise. I felt like I was riding a tsunami, powerless against the current. This is overwhelming. Mrs. Blackwood's expression softened. I know, dear. But this is what it means to be a Blackwood. We control the narrative or it controls us. She rose. Now, Xander will show you to your rooms. Get some rest. Tomorrow begins the real work. My rooms turned out to be a lavish suite with a bedroom, sitting room and private bath. My few boxes of belongings looked pathetic in the elegant space. Xander stood in the doorway. This will be your space. I'm down the hall. The unspoken words hung between us. This was a business arrangement, not a romance. Xander, I said, why are you doing this? Really? He leaned against the doorframe, considering me. Several reasons. My grandfather has wanted to reunite our families since your grandfather passed. This makes him happy. And the other reasons? You're Arthur Bennett's granddaughter. You understand what it means to carry legacy. Most women I meet see the Blackwood name as a prize to be won. You see it as a responsibility to be shared. I thought of Daniel, who had never understood my connection to my grandfather's legacy, who had called me obsessed with dead people's achievements. There's more, Xander continued. I'm being groomed to run for office. A married man polls better than a bachelor. And you? He gestured to me. You're perfect. Intelligent, educated, from the right family, and currently very motivated to make this work. His honesty was refreshing even if it was brutal. So I'm a political asset. We're both assets in this arrangement, he corrected. You gain the Blackwood protection and prestige. I gain a partner who understands the game. He moved to leave, then paused. One more thing. Your father called my mother while you were packing. Ice water flooded my veins. What did he say? He demanded to speak with you. Said you were making a spectacle of yourself and embarrassing the family. Xander's mouth tightened. My mother informed him that you're a Blackwood now, and we handle our own embarrassments. The thought of my father's fury should have terrified me. Instead, I felt a strange sense of liberation. For the first time I had power he couldn't touch. Thank you, I whispered. Xander nodded. Get some sleep, Chloe. Tomorrow you become Chloe Blackwood to be. It's a full-time job. After he left, I wandered through the rooms trying to absorb my new reality. The bathroom was marble with gold fixtures. The closet was larger than my dorm room. Everything spoke of old money and unshakable power. My phone buzzed. My mother. I took a deep breath and answered. Chloe Eleanor Bennett, what in God's name is going on? Her voice was shrill with panic. Your father is having a fit. He says you're engaged to some politician's son and there are photos everywhere. Mom, breathe, I said, sinking onto the silk-covered bed. It's true. I'm engaged to Alexander Blackwood. The Blackwoods. She sounded faint. As in General Blackwood's grandson? Yes. His grandfather and Grandpa Arthur were best friends. She was silent for a long moment. Chloe, be straight with me. Is this about Daniel taking Sophia to meet his parents? Tears filled my eyes at her perception. She'd always seen what others missed. Partly. But it's more than that, Mom. It's about everything. About Dad always choosing Sophia. About never being enough. Oh, honey. Her voice softened. You've always been enough. Your father. He has his own demons where Sophia is concerned. But that's no excuse. Daniel was going to let me arrive 3 days later and find Sophia already settled in with his family, I whispered. He changed my ticket without telling me. She made a sound of disgust. That boy. I knew there was something off about him. She paused. But marriage, Chloe? To a man you haven't seen in years. It's not a conventional arrangement, I admitted. But it's better than the alternative. The Blackwoods, they value me. They see Grandpa Arthur in me. As soon as I said it, I realized how true it was. How hungry I'd been for that recognition. My mother sighed. Well, it's done now. The whole world knows. Your father is threatening to disown you. Let him, I said, surprising myself with my boldness. I'm a Blackwood now. The words felt strange but powerful on my tongue. After we hung up, I scrolled through my messages. Dozens of notifications. Friends, acquaintances, even professors. The story had spread like wildfire. One message stood out from Sophia herself. Sophia, I can't believe you're doing this to Daniel. He's devastated. You're making a huge mistake with that Blackwood guy. Everyone knows he's just using you for your family name. The hypocrisy took my breath away. I started to type a furious reply, then remembered Mrs. Blackwood's advice. Don't engage. Maintain the high ground. Instead, I took a screenshot and sent it to Xander. His reply came instantly. Classic manipulation. Delete and block. She doesn't exist anymore. As I blocked Sophia's number, I felt another layer of my old life fall away. The Chloe who cared what Sophia thought was the same Chloe who had cried when her father missed her graduation to attend Sophia's dance recital. That girl was gone. A soft knock came at my door. Beatrice stood there with a binder. Your schedule for tomorrow, she said, handing it to me. We begin at 6 a.m. with a briefing on the Blackwood family history. You need to know what you're representing. I took the binder, its weight ominous. Thank you, Beatrice. She studied me for a moment, her expression unreadable. I knew your grandfather, she said finally. He was a great man. Fiercely loyal to those he loved. Her eyes narrowed slightly. I hope you've inherited that quality. The implied threat was clear. Don't hurt this family. I'm loyal to those who are loyal to me, I said, meeting her gaze squarely. A faint smile touched her lips. Good answer. She turned to leave. 6 a.m. Chloe. Don't be late. As I prepared for bed in the luxurious bathroom, I caught sight of my reflection. A girl playing dress-up in a mansion that wasn't hers, wearing a ring that was essentially borrowed, engaged to a man who saw her as a strategic asset. But as I studied myself closer, I saw something else in my eyes. A glint of steel that hadn't been there before. The beginnings of the woman who could belong in this world. The shadow of my grandfather's strength. I thought of Daniel and Sophia, probably still at his parents' house, spinning their lies. Of my father raging somewhere about my disobedience. Of the life I was leaving behind. Then I thought of General Blackwood's respect. Of Mrs. Blackwood's calm guidance. Of Xander's unwavering support. For the first time since I'd seen that fateful email, I didn't feel like a victim of circumstance. I felt like a general surveying a battlefield, and for the first time I liked my position. The game was indeed on. And I was ready to play. The binder Beatrice gave me was more than a schedule. It was a blueprint for becoming someone new. I sat on the edge of the bed, its silk coverlet feeling alien under my fingertips, and opened it. Day 1, Blackwood Protocol. 6 a.m. Family History and Legacy. 7:30 a.m. Media Training and Interview Preparation. 9 a.m. Current Political Landscape. 10:30 a.m. Wardrobe and Presentation. 12 p.m. Lunch with General Blackwood. 1:30 p.m. Social Etiquette and Diplomacy. 3 p.m. Charity Foundation Overview. 4:30 p.m. Security Briefing. 6 p.m. Dinner with Blackwood Associates. I stared at the itinerary. This wasn't just preparation. It was immersion. I was being remade into Chloe Blackwood before I'd even taken the name. Sleep felt impossible. I wandered to the window, looking out over the manicured grounds. Somewhere out there, Daniel was probably telling himself comforting lies about why I'd done this. Somewhere my father was fuming. But here in this fortress of old money and power I was safe. At 5:45 a.m. there was a soft knock. A woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a severe bun stood holding a tray. "Miss Bennett? I'm Clara. I've brought you coffee and something light before your briefing." She set the tray on a table. Black coffee, Greek yogurt with berries, and a single perfect croissant. "Beatrice believes in fortified soldiers," she said with a slight smile. "The general is particular about punctuality." "Thank you," I said, genuinely grateful. "Are you?" "The house manager," she finished. "I've been with the Blackwoods since Alexander was a boy. Your grandfather was always kind to me when he visited." The mention of my grandfather grounded me. "You knew him?" "He and the general would play chess for hours in the library." Her eyes twinkled. "They'd argue politics and strategy like they were still on the battlefield. It's good to have a Bennett in this house again." Her words felt like a blessing. As I ate, I opened the family history section of the binder. It wasn't just dry facts. It was a story of power, carefully maintained through generations. At exactly 6 a.m. I entered the library. General Blackwood stood by the fireplace, leaning on a cane I hadn't noticed the night before. "Punctual," he said approvingly. "Your grandfather was never late either. Said being on time showed respect for other people's time." "I remember," I said softly. He gestured to 2 leather chairs. "Sit. We begin with truth, Chloe. The Blackwood legacy isn't just about power. It's about responsibility. My grandfather built this family's fortune during the Industrial Revolution. He believed wealth without purpose was corruption." He fixed me with those sharp blue eyes. "Your engagement to Alexander isn't a social contract. It's a merging of legacies. The Bennetts and Blackwoods stood together through wars and peace. Now we stand together again." "Why now?" I asked. "Xander and I haven't seen each other in years. Why is this happening so suddenly?" The general's expression grew grim. "Because the world is changing. Because there are forces that would see families like ours dismantled. Because Alexander needs a partner who understands what's at stake, not some social climber who'll post their wedding dress on social media." He leaned forward. "And because your grandfather made me promise to look after you if anything happened to him. I failed in that duty while you were with that Parker boy. I won't fail again." The revelation stunned me. He asked you to look after me? On his deathbed?" The general's voice grew rough. "He worried about your father's influences. He wanted you protected, guided. I thought giving you space to live your life was protection. I was wrong." Tears pricked my eyes. My grandfather, even in his final moments, had been watching over me. "Now," the general said, his tone becoming businesslike, "let's discuss what it truly means to be a Blackwood." The media training session was conducted by a sharp-eyed woman named Victoria who had coached senators and CEOs. "The key," she said, pacing before me in the sunroom, "is to never let them see you react. You're always calm, always measured. The Blackwoods are oak trees in a storm. They bend but never break. She had me practice answers to difficult questions. What do you say to those who claim this engagement is sudden and impulsive? I took a breath. Xander and I have known each other since childhood. Our families have been connected for generations. Some things feel sudden only to those who weren't paying attention. Victoria nodded. Good. Deflect with history. Now what about Daniel Parker? I felt my jaw tighten. Daniel is part of my past. I prefer to focus on my future with Xander. Better, she said. But relax your shoulders. You look like you're preparing for battle. Smile slightly when you say, past. It shows fond memory, not bitterness. We practiced for what felt like hours until my responses became automatic, polished. At 9 a.m., a political strategist named Robert walked me through the current landscape. The Blackwoods are traditionally conservative but with strong bipartisan relationships. You'll need to understand the key players, the pending legislation, the charitable causes we support. He handed me another binder. Memorize these before the fundraiser next week. The wardrobe session was with a stylist named Isabel who assessed me like a sculptor studying marble. You have your grandmother's coloring, she said, holding fabric swatches against my skin. Emeralds will be your signature. It honors the ring and complements your eyes. She dismissed all my existing clothes with a wave of her hand. We'll build you a new wardrobe. Classic, elegant, with occasional strategic boldness. The red dress was a good instinct, it showed strength. By the time I met General Blackwood for lunch, my head was spinning with information. He watched me across the table as I picked at my salad. Overwhelmed. A little, I admitted. Good. That means you're taking it seriously. He poured us both water. Your grandfather would be proud of you today. Would he? I asked softly. This isn't exactly the path I think he imagined for me. The path doesn't matter, Chloe. Only the character you show while walking it. He studied me. Arthur never cared about tradition for tradition's sake. He cared about honor. About doing what's right even when it's difficult. He leaned back. Now tell me what you know about the upcoming infrastructure bill. The afternoon passed in a blur of etiquette lessons and charity briefings. Beatrice herself conducted the security briefing. There have been threats, she said matter-of-factly. Nothing serious yet, but your visibility will make you a target. You'll have security with you at all public events. They're professionals, let them do their jobs. She handed me a device that looked like a fancy watch. Emergency alert. Wear it always. If you feel threatened, press the crown twice. The reality of what I was stepping into settled heavily on my shoulders. This wasn't just about social status, it was about actual physical risk. At 6 p.m. I entered the formal dining room wearing one of Isabel's selections. A simple but exquisitely cut navy dress. Xander stood with 3 other people near the fireplace. Chloe, he said, coming to take my hand. You remember my parents. And this is Senator Carter and his wife, Margaret. The senator shook my hand warmly. The Bennett heir. Your grandfather was one of the finest men I ever knew. He'd be thrilled to see this union. His wife smiled, though her eyes were assessing. We were so surprised to hear the news. How long has this been in the works? Xander's hand tightened slightly on mine. Some things feel inevitable once they happen, he said smoothly. As soon as I reconnected with Chloe, I knew. Dinner was a masterclass in political conversation. Light on substance, heavy on implication. I used Victoria's training, deflecting personal questions with discussions of policy or charity work. Chloe is particularly interested in our Veterans Education Initiative, Mrs. Blackwood said at one point, skillfully steering the conversation away from my family. As coffee was served, the senator leaned toward me. I understand you're at State University. Fine institution. Are you planning to continue your studies after the wedding? I am, I said. Education was important to my grandfather. He believed informed citizens were the foundation of democracy. The general, who had been quiet through most of the meal, gave me an approving nod. Later, as the guests departed, Xander and I stood in the foyer. You were impressive tonight, he said quietly. Natural. It didn't feel natural, I admitted. It felt like performing. All politics is performance, he said. The trick is believing your own lines. We walked upstairs together, the mansion quiet around us. At my door he paused. There's an event tomorrow night, the Children's Hospital Gala. Our first public appearance as an engaged couple. Already. The longer we wait, the more speculation grows. He studied me. Are you ready? I thought of Daniel and Sophia, of my father's disapproval, of the life I'd left behind. Then I thought of the General's pride, Mrs. Blackwood's guidance, Xander's steady presence. I'm ready, I said. He nodded. Good. Tomorrow we show the world what a Blackwood-Bennett union looks like. After he left, I noticed a package on my bedside table. Inside was a framed photo I hadn't seen in years. My grandfather and General Blackwood, young and in uniform, standing before a tank with mountains behind them. On the back, in my grandfather's handwriting, James and me in Korea. Brothers to the end. Tears filled my eyes. However this had started, it was becoming something more. A reclamation of legacy, of family, of the person I was meant to be. I placed the photo on my nightstand, the emerald ring catching the light as I did. However complicated this arrangement was, however it had begun, I realized with sudden clarity that I wasn't playing a role anymore. I was becoming Chloe Blackwood. And the transformation felt less like pretending and more like coming home. The morning of the gala dawned with an air of heightened tension. At breakfast, Beatrice slid a tablet across the table to me without a word. On it was a gossip column with the headline, From Dump to Diamond, Is Chloe Bennett's Engagement Rebound of the Century? I skimmed the article, my coffee turning to acid in my stomach. They had photos of Daniel looking mournful outside my old dorm and contrasted them with a paparazzi shot of Xander and me returning to the Blackwood estate. The narrative was clear. Heartbroken girl makes impulsive decision. Don't let it rattle you, Mrs. Blackwood said calmly, pouring herself more tea. They're testing you. Seeing if you'll break. Xander entered, already dressed for the day in a suit that cost more than my first car. He glanced at the tablet and snorted. Desperate. Parker must have fed them that morning photo. He's trying to control the narrative, I said, surprising myself with how easily the media analysis came now. Exactly. Xander took the seat beside me. Which is why tonight is important. We show them a united front. We show them a power couple, not a rebound. The hours before the gala were a whirlwind of preparation. Isabel arrived with a team, hair, makeup, and a dress that took my breath away. It was a deep emerald green, the exact color of my ring, with a silhouette that was both classic and daring. You're not just attending a gala, Isabel said as she zipped me up. You're making your debut. Every camera will be on you. Every socialite will be dissecting your every move. When I finally looked in the full-length mirror, I barely recognized myself. The woman staring back was elegant, polished, and radiating a confidence I didn't fully feel. Xander's quiet wow from the doorway made me turn. He looked devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo, his eyes dark with appreciation. You clean up nicely, I said, my voice only slightly unsteady. He came forward and took my hand, his thumb brushing over the emerald ring. Ready to face the wolves? With you as my shield? I smiled. Always. The car ride to the event was quiet. Xander spent it on phone calls, checking in with campaign staff, confirming details for upcoming appearances. I used the time to center myself, to remember Victoria's training. You are a Blackwood. You are a Bennett. You belong here. When we pulled up to the hotel, the flashbulbs erupted like fireworks. Xander squeezed my hand. Remember, they're just lights. Look at me, not them. But as we stepped out of the car, the wall of sound and light was overwhelming. Reporters shouted our names, questions blending into a cacophony. Xander kept his hand firmly on the small of my back, guiding me through the chaos. Inside, the ballroom was a sea of glittering gowns and powerful people. Conversations hushed slightly as we entered, then resumed with renewed energy. I felt hundreds of eyes on us, assessing, judging. Alexander. Chloe. Mrs. Blackwood materialized beside us, elegant in silver. The hospital director is eager to meet you. We were swept into a round of introductions, politicians, donors, society figures. I used the techniques Victoria had drilled into me. Firm handshake, direct eye contact, remembering names. You're Arthur Bennett's granddaughter, an elderly woman said, her grip surprisingly strong. He would be so proud. Thank you, Mrs. Wellington, I said, recalling her from my briefing binder. Your work with veteran families is inspiring. Her eyes widened slightly, then warmed. You've done your homework. Refreshing. As we moved through the crowd, I gradually found my rhythm. The training kicked in, deflecting personal questions, steering conversations toward policy or charity work, always presenting a united front with Xander. It was during a conversation with the mayor that I saw them. Across the ballroom near the entrance stood Daniel and Sophia. My breath caught. Daniel looked handsome and uncomfortable in a tuxedo that was slightly too formal for the event. Sophia wore a pale pink gown that was clearly chosen to look innocent and sweet. She clung to Daniel's arm, her eyes wide as she took in the opulence. "What is he doing here?" Xander murmured, his hand tightening on mine. Mrs. Blackwood's smile never wavered, but her eyes turned to ice. "Margaret Whitlock's plus ones, I assume. She's always enjoyed drama." Daniel's gaze met mine across the room. For a moment he looked like the boy I'd fallen in love with, uncertain, pleading. Then Sophia whispered something in his ear and his expression hardened. "Steady," Xander said softly. "They want a reaction. Don't give them one." But as the evening progressed, it became clear they weren't going to stay on the sidelines. During the charity auction, as Xander and I stood to applaud a particularly generous donation, Sophia, accidentally, bumped into me, spilling her champagne down the front of my dress. "Oh my God," she exclaimed loudly enough to draw attention. "Chloe, I'm so sorry. You just moved so suddenly." The emerald silk was now stained and clinging transparently to my torso. Dozens of phones were immediately raised, capturing my humiliation. For a terrible second I froze. I saw the triumph in Sophia's eyes, the satisfaction in Daniel's. This was what they'd wanted, to prove I didn't belong in this world. But then Xander was there, removing his jacket and wrapping it around my shoulders in one smooth motion. "An honest mistake," he said, his voice carrying easily through the sudden silence. "Though perhaps you should be more careful with your champagne, Ms. Rossi. This is a children's hospital event, not a college party." The subtle rebuke was perfectly delivered. A few people chuckled. Sophia's cheeks flushed. Mrs. Blackwood appeared at my other side. "The hotel has a suite where you can change, dear." Isabel brought a backup dress, of course. Of course she had. The Blackwoods were always prepared. As we moved toward the exit, Daniel stepped in front of us. "Chloe, we need to talk." "Not now, Daniel," Xander said, his tone dismissive. "This doesn't concern you, Blackwood." Daniel's voice was tight. "Chloe, please. This charade has gone on long enough." I met his gaze squarely, Xander's jacket warm around my shoulders. "The only charade here is you pretending you didn't betray me. Now if you'll excuse me, I have a gala to return to." The walk away from him felt like shedding chains. In the hotel suite, Isabel had indeed laid out a backup dress. A sleek black number that was even more stunning than the first. "You handled that well," Xander said as I changed. "I had good teachers." I emerged from the bathroom feeling renewed. "Let's go finish this." When we returned to the ballroom, the atmosphere had shifted. People looked at us with new respect, and at Daniel and Sophia with open disdain. In this world, grace under pressure was currency, and we had just demonstrated we had plenty. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of strategic conversations and photo opportunities. We danced, we smiled, we presented the perfect image of a couple in love and in power. It was during our dance that Daniel and Sophia made their exit, slinking out like scolded children. I felt no triumph, only a quiet certainty that I had chosen the right path. As the gala wound down, the hospital director made a point of finding us. "You've been wonderful tonight," she said. "The media coverage will mean so much for our patients." In the car ride home, Xander was quiet. "You were magnificent tonight," he said finally. When Sophia spilled that drink, I thought for sure. "So did I admitted. But then I remembered who I am. Whose legacy I carry." He took my hand. "Our legacy now." When we returned to the estate, there was a message waiting. Beatrice handed me a tablet with a grim expression. Sophia had posted again. A tearful selfie with Daniel captioned, "Sometimes the truth hurts, but we have to face it together. #RealLove, #weathering the storm." The comments were filled with support, painting me as the villain who had moved on callously while they suffered. "It doesn't matter," I said, handing the tablet back to Beatrice. "They're shouting into an echo chamber. We're building something real." Xander looked at me with something akin to pride. "You're learning." Upstairs, as I prepared for bed, I looked at the photo of our grandfathers. Two men who had faced real battles, real storms. My problems felt small in comparison, but the principles were the same. Stand your ground, protect your people, never show weakness. I checked my phone one last time before sleeping. There was a message from my mother. Saw the photos from the gala. You look like you belong there. Your grandfather would be so proud. I fell asleep with those words warming me, the emerald ring still on my finger, the Blackwood estate silent and secure around me. The battle wasn't over. I knew that. But for the first time I truly believed we could win. The days after the gala settled into a new rhythm, a whirlwind of fittings, briefings, and public appearances. The charade, as Daniel had called it, was becoming my reality. And with each passing day the line between performance and truth blurred a little more. It was during a wedding planning session that the next attack came. Beatrice, Mrs. Blackwood, and I were reviewing floral arrangements when Clara entered, her face unusually pale. "Miss Bennet," she said quietly. "There's a situation." She handed me a tablet. On it was a campus news site with the headline, "Blackwood Fiancé's Family Drama. Father Claims Engagement is a Lie." My stomach dropped as I read the article. My father had given an interview, his words dripping with condescension. "Chloe has always been dramatic," he was quoted as saying. "This engagement is clearly a cry for attention after her little breakup. The Blackwoods are humoring her, but it won't last. She'll come crawling back to Daniel eventually." The comments were brutal. People were calling me delusional, a social climber, a girl trying to trade up after being dumped. Mrs. Blackwood took the tablet, her expression hardening. "This ends now." She turned to Beatrice. "Get James on the phone." Within minutes, General Blackwood's voice boomed through the speakerphone. "I've seen it. Arthur would be rolling in his grave if he knew how his son was behaving." "What do we do?" I asked, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. "We counterattack," the general said without hesitation. "But with class. We release the engagement photos early. We give an exclusive interview about our family's historic connection. We remind people exactly who you are." The photo shoot was scheduled for that afternoon. As Isabel adjusted my dress, a stunning ivory gown that was a preview of wedding things to come, Xander entered the studio. "I saw what your father said," he said quietly, coming to stand behind me as I looked in the mirror. Our eyes met in the reflection. "I'm sorry." The genuine sympathy in his voice undid me. Tears I'd been holding back since reading the article finally spilled over. "He's always chosen her," I whispered. "Always believed her. Why would this be any different?" Xander turned me to face him, his hands warm on my shoulders. "Listen to me. His opinion doesn't matter. You know the truth. I know the truth. Everyone who matters knows the truth." He wiped a tear from my cheek with his thumb. "Now let's show the world what real family looks like." The photo shoot was transformative. The photographer, a famous artist known for capturing political power couples, knew exactly how to frame us. One shot in particular took my breath away. Xander standing behind me, his hands on my shoulders, both of us looking directly at the camera with identical expressions of unwavering confidence. "We'll use this one for the exclusive," Mrs. Blackwood said, viewing the digital captures. "It tells the entire story." The exclusive interview was with Eleanor Vance, a respected journalist known for her integrity. She came to the Blackwood estate that evening, her eyes sharp with intelligence as she took in the library where we sat. "Your father claims this engagement isn't real," she began, her voice neutral. I felt Xander's hand find mine, his grip firm. "My father," I said, my voice clear and steady, "hasn't known what's real for a very long time. He prefers comfortable fictions to difficult truths." Eleanor's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's quite an accusation." "It's quite a betrayal," I countered. "But this engagement isn't about my father. It's about legacy. About honoring the connection between our families." I held up my hand, the emerald catching the light. "This ring belonged to Xander's grandmother. It represents generations of Blackwoods. And I represent generations of Bennets. That's the truth." Xander picked up smoothly. "Our grandfathers fought side by side. They built legacies of service and honor. Chloe is her grandfather's heir in every way that matters." The article dropped at midnight. By morning the narrative had completely shifted. The photo of us, unbreakable, united, was everywhere. The headline read, "Legacy, not lies." The Blackwood-Bennett union stands firm. My phone buzzed with a message from my mother. I'm so proud of you. Your grandfather is smiling today. But the victory felt hollow when I saw the next development. Sophia had posted a series of photos with my father. Them laughing over coffee, him helping her with her coat, the two of them looking like the perfect father-daughter duo. The caption, "Grateful for family who sees the real you. #Daddy'sGirl #family first." The comments were filled with people speculating about why I would abandon such a loving father. The wedding planning continued at a relentless pace. What I had initially thought would be a small strategic ceremony had ballooned into a major society event. 300 guests, media coverage, the works. We're making a statement, Mrs. Blackwood explained as we reviewed the growing guest list. We're showing everyone that the Blackwood-Bennett alliance is strong, public, and permanent. One afternoon, as I was practicing my vows with Victoria, Xander found me in the garden. "We need to talk about the prenuptial agreement," he said, his expression unreadable. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. Of course. The lawyer, a severe woman named Ms. Chin, laid out the documents in the library. The terms were generous. Shockingly so. A substantial trust fund, properties, provisions that would leave me wealthy even if the marriage ended. "I don't understand," I said, looking from the documents to Xander. "This is more than fair. It's extravagant." "My grandmother's terms," Xander said quietly. "She believed women should always have their own power in a marriage." Miss Chin pointed to a particular clause. "This is unusual, the Bennett Legacy Fund. A separate trust in your name only, to be used to preserve and promote your grandfather's legacy." Tears filled my eyes as I read the details. The fund would support veterans' education, historical preservation, all the causes my grandfather had held dear. "Your idea?" I asked Xander. He shook his head. "My grandfather's." He said Arthur's work shouldn't die with him. I signed the documents with a hand that trembled only slightly. However this marriage had begun, it was becoming something real. A partnership built on mutual respect and shared history. The following week brought the first wedding dress fitting. The design was my grandmother's, preserved and updated by a famous designer. As I stood on the pedestal, the ivory silk flowing around me, I saw Mrs. Blackwood's eyes glisten with tears. "You look just like Alara," she whispered. She would be so happy. In that moment, surrounded by generations of Blackwood women who had welcomed me as one of their own, I felt a sense of belonging deeper than anything I'd ever known with my own family. The peace couldn't last. A week before the wedding, the storm finally broke. It started with a leaked email, one Daniel had sent to his mother, obtained by a gossip site known for its ruthless tactics. "Mom, I know you're angry, but you have to understand, Sophia needs me right now. Her mother's sick, she has no one. Chloe will come around eventually. He always does. In the meantime, maybe don't mention the pregnancy to Dad yet?" The internet exploded. #ParkerBaby started trending within minutes. The narrative of the poor misunderstood couple I'd destroyed came crashing down. My phone started ringing immediately. First my mother, sobbing with relief that the truth was out. Then Maya, screaming with vindication. Then numbers I didn't recognize, reporters no doubt. But it was the call from Daniel that I had been waiting for. "Chloe," he said, his voice ragged. "Please. You have to believe me. That email is fake. Someone doctored it." "Stop lying, Daniel," I said, my voice cold. "Just stop." He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was broken. "It was a mistake. One night after you and I fought. I was drunk, she was there. It didn't mean anything. The confirmation should have hurt. Instead, I felt nothing but a vast, empty calm. Goodbye, Daniel." I hung up as Xander entered the room. He took one look at my face and pulled me into his arms. "I'm sorry," he murmured against my hair. "Don't be," I said, my voice muffled against his chest. "Now everyone knows the truth." But the truth, it turned out, was even uglier than I imagined. That evening, as we prepared for another public appearance, a charity auction for the Veterans Fund, Beatrice entered with her tablet, her face grim. "Sophia Rossi has been admitted to the hospital," she said. "Complications with the pregnancy." For a terrible moment I thought she was going to blame me. But Beatrice continued, "Daniel Parker was with her. Witnesses say they were arguing violently before she collapsed. The news reports started trickling in. A domestic disturbance call, an ambulance, a frantic scene at the emergency room. Mrs. Blackwood cancelled our appearance. "We stay out of this," she said firmly. "We maintain dignity." But dignity was in short supply that night. Around midnight my phone rang again. To my shock it was Mrs. Parker, Daniel's mother. "Chloe," she said, her voice thick with tears. "I'm so sorry. For everything. Daniel. He's been arrested. Sophia lost the baby and she's saying he pushed her." The world tilted. However much I hated them, however betrayed I felt, I never would have wished for this. Mrs. Parker was sobbing now. "He's ruined his life. And for what? That girl. She was never worth it. You were always the one, Chloe. You were always." I hung up, my hands trembling. Xander took the phone from me. "Enough," he said firmly. "Their drama is not our concern." But I couldn't stop the thoughts racing through my mind. Daniel in jail. Sophia in the hospital. A life lost before it began. "This is my fault," I whispered. Xander took my face in his hands, forcing me to meet his gaze. "No. Their choices. Their consequences. You chose to walk away from toxicity. You chose to build something real." He kissed my forehead, his lips warm against my skin. "We have a wedding in 1 week. Focus on that. Focus on us." Later, as I lay in bed, I thought about the twisted path that had led me here. The betrayal that had felt like the end of my world had actually been my salvation. The emerald ring glittered in the moonlight as I turned it on my finger. However complicated, however unconventional, this engagement had become the most real thing in my life. And I realized with sudden, stunning clarity, I wasn't just playing the part of Xander Blackwood's fiancé anymore. I was falling in love with my husband-be. The morning after the news broke felt like emerging from a storm. The world was quieter, but the damage was everywhere. Newspapers piled up in the breakfast room, each with some variation of the same headline: "Parker heir arrested after mistress's miscarriage." I pushed them away, my appetite gone. Mrs. Blackwood entered, her expression unreadable as she surveyed the untouched papers. "The vultures are circling," she said calmly. "But they'll find no carrion here. We release a brief statement expressing sympathy for their loss and emphasizing that you've had no contact with Daniel Parker since your engagement." She placed a single sheet of paper before me. The statement was perfectly crafted, compassionate but distant, acknowledging tragedy without accepting blame. "Sign it," she said. "Then we never speak of this again." I signed. The pen felt heavy in my hand. Final. Xander found me later in the library, staring out at the gardens where the first autumn leaves were beginning to fall. He didn't speak, just came to stand beside me, his shoulder brushing mine. "Did you know?" I asked quietly. "About the pregnancy?" "Rumors," he said. "Nothing confirmed. I didn't want to hurt you with speculation." The wedding was now days away. What should have been a joyful countdown felt shadowed by tragedy. But the Blackwoods, I was learning, were masters at navigating storms. "The wedding proceeds as planned," General Blackwood declared that evening. "We will not let their poor choices dictate our lives." The rehearsal dinner should have been a small, intimate affair. Instead, it had become a display of Blackwood power. Every influential friend, every political ally, every society figure who mattered was in attendance. I stood beside Xander at the entrance to the Blackwood ballroom, wearing a deep blue gown that felt like armor. One by one they filed past, senators, ambassadors, CEOs, each offering congratulations and subtly assessing the woman who would become a Blackwood. My mother arrived alone, her face pale but determined. She hugged me tightly. "Your father won't be coming," she whispered. "He's not well." I didn't ask what she meant. Some truths were better left unexamined. The dinner was a masterpiece of political theater. General Blackwood gave a toast that brought tears to my eyes, speaking of my grandfather, of legacy, of the future Xander and I would build together. It was during dessert that the commotion began at the entrance. Raised voices. Then Daniel's mother burst into the ballroom, her designer dress wrinkled, her hair disheveled. "Chloe," she cried, her voice cutting through the civilized murmur of conversation. "Please. You have to help him." The room fell silent. Every eye turned to us. Mrs. Parker stumbled toward our table, tears streaming down her face. "They're charging him with manslaughter. He could go to prison for years." You're the only one Sophia will listen to. If you talk to her, get her to recant. Xander was on his feet instantly, positioning himself between me and Mrs. Parker. This isn't the time or place, Eleanor. But he loves you, Chloe. He always has. This was all that girl's doing. She manipulated him, trapped him. I rose slowly, my hand finding Xander's. The room was utterly still, watching. Mrs. Parker, I said, my voice clear and steady in the silence. I'm sorry for your pain, but I can't help you. The choices Daniel made were his alone. Her face crumpled. You owe him 7 years, Chloe. He was going to marry you. He was going to marry me, I agreed quietly. While taking my sister to meet his parents. While getting her pregnant. The man you're defending doesn't exist, Mrs. Parker. He's a fiction you created to avoid facing who your son really is. The truth hung in the air, brutal and undeniable. Mrs. Parker stared at me, her mouth working soundlessly. Then she turned and fled, her sobs echoing in the terrible silence. General Blackwood stood. Well, he said, picking up his wine glass. I believe we were toasting to the happy couple? As if by magic, the conversation slowly resumed. The incident was being erased already, smoothed over by Blackwood power. But later, as Xander walked me to my room, he stopped outside my door. That took courage, he said quietly. What you said to her. It needed to be said. I looked up at him. All of it. He cupped my face, his thumb stroking my cheek. Tomorrow, he said softly. Tomorrow you become my wife. There was something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Not calculation, not strategy, but genuine affection. I'll be there, I promised. The wedding day dawned clear and bright. Isabel and her team arrived before sunrise, turning my rooms into a command center. Hair, makeup, the dress, all of it happening with military precision. My mother came to help me into my grandmother's wedding dress. As she fastened the tiny buttons up my back, her hands trembled. I wish your grandfather could see you, she whispered. He always said you were meant for great things. When I was finally dressed, I looked in the mirror and saw a stranger. An elegant, powerful woman ready to claim her destiny. The ceremony was held in the Blackwood Gardens under a canopy of autumn leaves. 400 guests watched as I walked toward Xander, who stood waiting with his grandfather as his best man. His eyes when he saw me, that was the moment I knew. However this had started, whatever calculations had brought us here, what we had built was real. We said our vows, traditional words that felt brand new when spoken to each other. When Xander slid the wedding band onto my finger beside the emerald engagement ring, his hands were steady, his gaze certain. I promise to honor not just who you are, he said, his voice clear and strong, but who you're becoming. To stand with you as your partner in all things. To build a legacy worthy of both our families. Tears I hadn't known I was holding back spilled over. This wasn't the cold, political union I had imagined. This was a promise. The reception was a blur of toasts and dancing and smiling until my face ached. But through it all, Xander's hand was always on my back, his presence my anchor. It was during our first dance that he pulled me closer than necessary, his lips brushing my ear. I meant every word, he murmured. This is real for me, Chloe. However it started, it's real now. My heart swelled. For me too. We slipped away hours before the party ended, changing into travel clothes for our honeymoon, though in reality, we were just moving to the Blackwood townhouse in the city. As we drove away from the estate, Xander took my hand. There's something I need to show you. He drove us to a modern high-rise overlooking the river. The penthouse was stunning, all glass and light with panoramic views of the city. This is ours, he said, watching my reaction. I had it designed while we were preparing. I wanted us to have a place that was just ours. No family history, no ghosts. Just us. Tears filled my eyes again. Xander. He led me to the master bedroom. On the dresser sat 2 photos. One of our grandfathers in their youth and one from our engagement photos, the one where we looked unbreakable. We bring the best of our past, he said softly. But we build our future. That night, for the first time, I slept in my husband's arms. And for the first time since Daniel's betrayal, I felt completely safe. Completely cherished. The papers the next morning called it the wedding of the decade. The photos showed a radiant couple perfectly matched, clearly in love. And the remarkable thing? They weren't wrong. However it had begun, whatever manipulations and calculations had brought us together, what Xander and I had found was real. A partnership. A meeting of minds and hearts. A love built not on passion but on respect, which I was learning burned far brighter and longer. As I stood on our balcony that first morning, watching the city come to life below me, Xander came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Mrs. Blackwood," he murmured against my hair. I turned in his arms, smiling up at him. "I like the sound of that." The emerald ring caught the morning light, no longer a symbol of a business arrangement, but a promise kept. A future secured. A love built the Blackwood way, slowly, carefully, and built to last. The morning light streamed into our penthouse, painting everything in gold. I woke to find Xander watching me, his head propped on his hand, a softness in his eyes I was still getting used to. "No briefings," I murmured, my voice still thick with sleep. "Beatrice has been ordered to stand down for a week," he said, his fingers tracing a lazy pattern on my shoulder. "My grandfather's orders," he said. "Even generals deserve a honeymoon." The word honeymoon hung in the air between us, charged with a new meaning. The pretense was over. The performance had ended. We were alone, and the silence was filled not with strategy but with possibility. He leaned down and kissed me, and for the first time it wasn't for an audience. It was slow and searching, a conversation without words. The silk sheets whispered as they slid away, and the city below our glass walls disappeared. There was no Blackwood legacy, no Bennett honor, no vengeful ex-lover or treacherous sister. There was only this, skin against skin, the hammering of a heart that was learning a new rhythm, and the terrifying, exhilarating freedom of being truly seen. Later, as we lay tangled together, he said, "I was afraid I'd ruined it." "Ruined what?" "This." He gestured between us. "By making it a transaction. By not telling you from the beginning that I wanted it to be real." I thought of that desperate text, his immediate response, the ring he'd offered without hesitation. "You knew," I realized aloud. "You knew I would say yes, and you knew why, and you saw a chance to make it real." He didn't deny it. "I've been waiting for you to be free of him for a long time, Chloe. Since that summer at your grandfather's estate. I just didn't know how to make it happen without becoming the villain." The truth settled over me, not as a betrayal but as a revelation. He hadn't been a passive participant in my revenge. He had been an active architect of our future. Our week of seclusion was a bubble of suspended reality. We cooked together in the stunning minimalist kitchen, laughing when we burned the sauce. We spent hours on the vast terrace talking about everything and nothing. His dreams for political office, my desire to revive my grandfather's charitable foundations, our shared fear of failing the legacies we carried. It was on the third morning that the outside world finally pierced our bubble. My phone buzzed insistently. It was my mother. "Chloe," she said, her voice strained. "It's your father. He's had a stroke." The news should have shattered me. Instead, I felt a distant clinical pity. "Is it bad?" "He's asking for you." I looked at Xander, who was watching me with quiet understanding. "I'll be there," I said to my mother, and hung up. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and regret. My father looked small in the white bed, the machines beeping a steady, mocking rhythm beside him. The powerful man who had always filled a room was reduced to this. Fragile, dependent. His eyes fluttered open as I entered. "Chloe." His voice was a rasp. "You came. You asked for me." He tried to gesture, his hand trembling. "Sophia, she won't come. He blames me. For everything." I said nothing. The silence stretched, filled with all the words he had never said, all the apologies he had never offered. "I was wrong," he whispered, the admission costing him dearly. "About her. About you. I thought by making up for her mother I was doing the right thing. But I was just weak." Tears filled his eyes, the first I had ever seen. "Your grandfather. He knew I was weak. That's why he left everything in trust for you. He told me I would ruin his legacy." The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. My grandfather's will, the trust fund I couldn't touch until I was 30, it hadn't been about control. It had been about protection. Protection from my father's poor judgment. "He loved you," I said, though the words felt inadequate. "He was disappointed in me." He closed his eyes. And he was right to be. I stayed until he fell asleep, my hand in his, the past between us finally, quietly laid to rest. As I left, my mother was waiting in the hallway. "He signed the divorce papers this morning," she said, her voice steady. Before this happened. He said it was the last decent thing he could do for me." I hugged her, this woman who had endured so much with such quiet grace. "Come home with me," I said. "The penthouse is huge. You can have your own space." She shook her head, smiling through her tears. "This is my fresh start, darling. But I'll visit. Often." The news about Daniel and Sophia broke while we were driving back to the penthouse. Beatrice, unable to resist for a full week, had sent a concise email. Daniel Parker pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter. Sentenced to 5 years, reduced to 3 with good behavior. Sophia Rossi has relocated out of state. The matter is concluded. I read the email aloud, my voice flat. Xander reached over and took my hand. "It's over, Chloe." And it was. The anger, the betrayal, the need for revenge. It had all burned away, leaving behind something stronger and cleaner. I was free. The following months were a whirlwind of a different kind. I finished my degree, graduating with honors. The photos of Xander beaming with pride in the audience splashed across the society pages. But it wasn't just for show anymore. We were a team. We worked together on the Bennett Legacy Fund, our first major project being a scholarship in my grandfather's name. We attended political functions and I found my voice, speaking about veterans' affairs with a passion that came from my blood. One evening we were hosting a dinner for several key donors. I was in the middle of explaining our education initiative when I felt a wave of dizziness. The room tilted. I reached for my water glass but my hand trembled, knocking it over. The shatter of crystal silenced the room. "Chloe." Xander was at my side instantly, his arm around me. "I'm fine," I insisted, though the world was swimming. "Just a little lightheaded." But I wasn't fine. Later, after the guest had been gracefully ushered out, I was sick in our bathroom, my body racked with tremors. Xander didn't call Beatrice. He didn't call a doctor. He called his mother. She arrived within the hour, taking one look at my pale face and the untouched tea beside me. A slow, knowing smile spread across her face. "Alexander," she said, her voice soft with wonder. "I think you should get a pregnancy test." The world stopped. Xander's eyes met mine, wide with shock, then with a dawning, terrifying joy. The test was positive. The doctor confirmed it the next day. We were going to have a child. An heir. A new branch on the ancient, tangled family tree. That night we stood on our terrace, his hand resting on my still flat stomach. The city lights glittered below, a universe of possibilities. "A child," he whispered, his voice full of awe. "Our child. Your grandfather must be thrilled," I said, thinking of the general's barely contained emotion when we told him. "Thrilled doesn't begin to cover it." Xander turned me to face him. "But this is ours, Chloe. Not the Blackwoods, not the Bennetts. Ours." He kissed me, and in that kiss I tasted the future, not as a burden to be carried but as a promise to be built. Together. The papers the next morning carried a new photo of us, taken as we left the doctor's office. Xander's hand was protective on my back. My face was turned up to his, radiant with a secret joy. The headline read, "A New Legacy, Blackwood Heir and Heiress Expecting." But they had it wrong. It wasn't about an heir. It was about a family. A family we had chosen, we had built, and we would protect with everything we had. I placed my hand over my stomach, over the emerald ring that was now a symbol of so much more than a business arrangement. It was a testament to survival, to resilience, to the unexpected, magnificent ways life can reassemble itself from the broken pieces. I had started this journey seeking revenge for a shattered heart. I had ended it with a husband I loved, a child on the way, and a power that was entirely my own. The game was over. Our life had begun. The end.